You're listening to the Australian Water Association podcast series.
I'm Ellen Fanning and I'm speaking today to Daniel Watson. Daniel is the Manager, Partnerships and Asset Systems at Coliban Water, and also Elizabeth Christian, the Asset Performance Manager at Lendlease Services. And they're speaking about a paper they've prepared, Maintenance Strategy Optimisation, a collaborative approach to continuously improve Coliban Water's maintenance regime. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
Maybe, Elizabeth, if you wanted to start, just outline for me the roles that Lendlease and Coliban play in this preventative maintenance program. How do you both work together to deliver that program?
Sure, thanks, Alan. So Lendlease was appointed as Coliban Water's operations and maintenance contractor, which kicked off from July 2013. From the outset of the contract, the intention was to have a very collaborative approach to maintenance service delivery, and it's certainly been that way right from the outset. Initially, the contract was designed for Coliban Water to provide maintenance scope and tasks to Lendlease, and that has worked successfully over the course of the contract. However, over the period that we've been on the journey together, we've certainly learnt a lot. Learn a lot about the assets. We've learned a lot about where the risks sit across the asset base. And we've learned also how to better incorporate feedback from the field regarding what maintenance has been effective and perhaps what could be improved.
I was interested to read in the paper, Daniel, that there was no problem with the delivery of frontline works. In fact, the collaboration had been working really well. But it seemed like there was almost an aha moment when you all looked around and saw that there were two key staff members who were critical to this successful development of maintenance, and started scratching your head thinking, what happens if those people leave?
Yeah, so we've been working through a process of late, which is really centering around sort of a risk-based approach to everything we do in asset management. I guess really the catalyst of that was sort of pushed upon us through the Asset Management Accountability Framework, which is happening in Victoria over the last few years. And then from that, we made the decision that we want to make sure they're all aligned with ISO 55000, which is the asset management standard. So yeah, I guess if you had to sum up those two, that framework and standard in one sentence, it would be that you take a risk-based approach to everything you do in asset management. Then we kind of sat back and had a think about how we were delivering our preventative maintenance program, and we kind of thought, yeah, it's working well, but are we really, can we hand on heart say that we're taking a risk-based approach to this? And one of the key risks of it is that, as you said, a lot of the knowledge and a lot of the history is sitting with only two people. So on one hand, we've been really lucky that those two maintenance planners have been involved since the outset of the partnership between Coliban Water and Lendlease. But at the other hand, there's a big risk there if one or both of them were to move on or to change roles or to do something else. It would be a pretty steep learning to pick that up.
Elizabeth, there were a couple of other issues, in that hand-on-heart kind of moment that you list as a lack of diversity in approach, the plan being designed to fit within a predetermined budget without sort of measuring in any way the effectiveness of that, whether things were over-maintained or under-maintained, and probably a reliance on a bit of a gut feel approach. Now, why were those issues and characteristics that were considered worthy of review?
We felt that the contract had progressed to a point where we could move beyond that sort of gut feel approach, and we were in a position after when we embarked on this 5 or 6 years of being into the contract and collecting a very significant amount of data around asset performance. In the nature of the way our contract works, it's designed to collect and harvest a lot of data straight from the field. So we're in a really ideal position to, I guess, step up the level of maturity of that allocation of maintenance, where it could be informed by the data that we have and get a little bit more structure around it also. I think also that we all felt there was asset risk that existed out there, and there was potentially misalignment in the way that we felt across the two organisations that risk was being managed. And so another key driver was that we felt this provided an opportunity for us to kick off the process with a detailed risk assessment across Coliban Water's key sites, and then look at how maintenance might play a role in managing that risk. It's important to note at that point also that maintenance is really only one strategy of a whole host of available strategies in managing risk. So, I guess we sort of felt that we're at a point where we could take the big step towards I guess that gut feel approach of maintenance allocation to something a little bit more informed and structured around managing Coliban Water's risk.
And the process that you looked at was this MSO process, Maintenance Strategy Optimisation, leveraging the sort of data that was available in a way that you describe in the paper as being readily implemented by the local team. Skip ahead for me and talk about the ways in which limiting the range of maintenance decisions and kind of prescribing a range of maintenance decisions is really useful in prioritising what needs to be done and identifying what needs to be done.
Yeah, that's a great point. We felt that over the course of however many years of working through maintenance planning, speaking, I guess, on behalf of Coliban Water here, there had been a variety of consultants, equipment suppliers and so forth that had input to maintenance planning and providing guidance to Coliban Water. The team, one of the key objectives of designing the MSO approach was that it needed to be standardised and it needed to be able to be implemented by the local team and understood by everyone from those people implementing the work out in the field through to senior management. So it needed to really, I think standardisation was a really key requirement of the process that we designed. And the way we achieved that was by working with an industry, renowned industry expert in maintenance planning from GHD, who designed us almost like a decision tree with standard outcomes depending on the level of risk that we felt the asset was inherent in that particular asset. And, obviously that was based on a detailed risk assessment using Coliban Water's risk framework, taking into account the operating context of the asset, the consequence of failure, and the likelihood of failure given its operational context, its redundancy, and a whole host of information that fed into the process. And then following it through the decision tree, you could arrive at predetermined maintenance outcomes, anything through to a very detailed RCM analysis approach through to no scheduled maintenance where the risk, I guess, was pretty low.
And Daniel, this goes back to this notion that you sort of had a one-size-fits-all budget and that you sort of didn't know whether you're over or under maintaining your assets. And you write in the paper that you've been able, by using this process, to redirect preventative maintenance from low-risk assets to higher-risk assets. Actually, how did that happen?
Yeah, well, I think one of the first things that became apparent to us was how we were sort of defining risk. So traditionally in our sort of maintenance planning, there'd been just a relatively narrow focus on sort of level of service risk, reliability risk, making sure that asset keeps operating. What we realised was that there was a little bit more broadly than that. So we made it specific to Coliban Water's current risk framework, which includes not only sort of level of service, sort of reliability risk, but health and safety, the environment, our regulatory risk, and our reputation risk. So I guess one of the examples we picked, one of the things that noticed that we learnt through the process was that there might be an asset that might fail or because of inadequate maintenance, and it might have a relatively low impact on services, but it might be the wrong asset at the wrong time at the wrong place, and it might sort of have reputational consequences.
Interestingly, the paper notes that preventative maintenance has been redirected from low-risk assets to high-risk assets, with 77 new maintenance activities applied to assets with a risk score of medium or above, and 36 maintenance tasks removed for low-risk assets. So is what you're describing literally the same budget, but getting more bang for your buck? And secondly, how do you know that you're not building in by letting things rise up that risk table, so that you repair things and maintain things in crisis mode rather than in preventative mode?
Definitely the best way to build any budget where possible is from the ground up. The original budget that we had for our preventative maintenance program was sort of developed about 7 years ago. Over that time, we had different assets, have aged, their condition is different. So, the budget that we had 7 years ago isn't necessarily the right budget for today. So what's been good about this process is gone through the MSO process. We've scoped up what maintenance we actually need, and then we add that up at the end of the day, and then we're putting that forward as our budget moving forward. That's also important too, to give confidence to the stakeholders, the key stakeholders of this work, being sort of the operators and the sort of operation engineers within Coliban Water, so that they can have a full understanding that we're looking after, I guess in a way we're making sure that we're maintaining those assets that are likely to, keep those operators up at night, and not worrying about the assets that won't. And I guess that leads into also that, as Liz touched on, not doing sort of feel-good maintenance. Not only a waste of money and maintaining assets that don't really need it and have no real consequence of failure, but also maintenance can lead, sort of intrusive maintenance can lead to failures.
That's very interesting. And Elizabeth, could you round it out for us? How do you assess the effectiveness of this kind of maintenance plan? How do you measure it?
We've proposed a number of measures to track the effectiveness of the program. I think, firstly, one of the things that we didn't quite anticipate when we first embarked on this journey was that we would have such a detailed, shared understanding at the end of it of where the risk lies, and that maintenance is one, as I said earlier, is only one strategy of other asset management strategies to manage that risk. So I think we're now in a really great position across our respective businesses that we understand the things that can result in reduced security of supply or impacts to the community, and we're actively managing those risks through not only maintenance but other measures such as carrying critical spares or having really robust operational contingency plans and other various controls. So that's been a significant outcome for sure.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for that description. That sounds like an amazing collaboration and an evolution of what was always a very effective preventative maintenance regime. I've been speaking to Elizabeth Christian, who is the Asset Performance Manager for Lendlease Services, and with Daniel Watson, the Manager, Partnerships and Asset Systems at Coliban Water. Thank you both very much for your time.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Alan. Good to chat.